Good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Francis. I am the owner of Lumen Strategies. We are a consulting firm that works with chambers of commerce to help them build A-plus advocacy programs, either through our direct one-to-one consulting or through our signature online advocacy framework program. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Sarah Principe and Brittany Burton. And we love working together with chambers to really help chambers move forward in the advocacy space. One of the ways that we also like to work with chambers in doing that is through our monthly webinars that we provide free to chamber executives to talk about all sorts of issues impacting your chamber. We primarily focus on advocacy issues, and last month we met with Bob Morgan, the president of the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, to talk about how local chambers can leverage their state chamber in their advocacy efforts. We have that recorded on our YouTube site and would encourage you to check out that webinar if you'd be interested in that topic. We are shifting gears a little bit today to go a little bit away from advocacy because we had an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. My friend Anissa Starnes has agreed to join us. Many of you know Anissa. She has more than 30 years of experience in association management, predominantly in Chamber of Commerce work. She is a veteran of the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, as I am, though we were not there at the same time and only got to meet after we had both left. She currently serves as the Chief Impact Officer. Let me make sure I get that right. As I check my notes, she is the Chief Impact Officer for YGM. And what they do, they're a nationwide consultancy firm that helps chambers with non-dues revenue development, board development, and nationwide executive searches. And we're going to talk a little bit about career development as a chamber executive today. And if you are somebody who is looking for maybe opportunities to grow, and this is certainly a great person to know in that space. The last thing I need to check my notes on from her bio, because I thought it was awesome. Her most important title, she says, is that of Shiny. Shiny is the name that her granddaughter gives to her, and it's the favorite title that she has to date. Anissa, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. It's good to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump right in. Let's start kind of from the perspective of somebody who is new to the chamber profession or a new Chamber of Commerce executive. What are some of the first steps that you think they should take to kind of really integrate themselves with the profession?
Well, first of all, my first conference, when I was brand new at the Charlotte Chamber, there used to be an association called the Association of Membership Execs of the Carolinas. So each state, or a lot of the states, had a very specific conference just for membership folks. And that was one of my first conferences that I went to. And I quickly learned that meeting my colleagues and my peers that I didn't even know were my colleagues and peers yet, but meeting them immediately was just going to be my lifeline, that I could reach out to others that I had met, some that had been in the industry forever and some that were brand new like myself. So I did that for a little while before there used to be a National Association of Membership Directs, NAMD, and they merged into ACCE eventually. But through my conference attendance, I learned how much I could gain from meeting my peers and colleagues, and never feel alone when you go there and meet somebody that's in the same boat you are.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's really one of the topics I wanted to kind of explore today is those conferences and how somebody can get the most out of them. I know Georgia has their state conference coming up in a couple of weeks. I believe the state of Texas has their conference next week. Your chamber exec going to these conferences. I've gone to those as a vendor. There's a lot to take in. What are some steps that folks can take to really make those meaningful experiences?
Well, first of all, signing up and going, because I have learned over the years, and I won't ask everybody to raise your hand here today. I would raise my hand. But a lot of us in the chamber space are actually introverts, or we tend to lean that way. So going to a conference and being around 200 people and meeting all these new people at one time might not be our comfort zone, but just making the most of it and participating in the social events, the sessions, getting to know people who's sitting beside you, because I always tell folks, whether it's at Institute or whether it's at a state conference, you never know when your next best idea is going to be sitting right beside you. And it doesn't matter what size the organization is. Like Brian mentioned, I started at the Charlotte Chamber. And I remember going to some of my first bigger national conferences and people saying, what problems could you possibly have with a staff of 50 and a multi-million-dollar budget? And we had the same issues the smallest chamber had, just multiplied. And sometimes we had, problems that the smaller chamber had, just a little bit smaller. And so you never know who's going to be sitting right beside you. So another tidbit that I always tell folks at state conferences or any conference really is take all the notes you want, suck it all in, and just go home knowing that you can't do it all. Because you will be overwhelmed at each conference with your pages and pages and pages of notes and things you want to implement as soon as you get home. And I always advise people take, a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, a year out, 2 years out, maybe 5 years out, and categorize the great ideas that you have. And just know that you can't do them all, but that you can do a couple of them and start leaning into it, because it can be overwhelming because there's so much great advice and so much, good ideas floating around that we all just borrow from each other. And you just can't do it all as soon as you get home. It's overwhelming.
Well, and I love that tip of setting out those 30, 60, 90-year objectives. Because I think for some folks, they go to a conference, they have all these good ideas, and when they don't, they get overwhelmed. And so then they don't do anything. And it's easy to leave some ideas behind that could really make a difference in your conference. I also wanted to delve into that idea of you never know who's sitting next to you. And I'll share one of the things that I think I've learned as going these. There's a great opportunity to reconnect with old friends at these conferences for folks who've been going a while. But I think sometimes people get in the rut of sitting at the same table with the same people for every session. And so one of the tips I would always have is don't sit with people from your own chamber, and, kind of try to rotate around the room as you go, because you never know what great idea is next to you, but you also never know what great idea is at the table 2 tables from you that you might be missing if you're not interacting with folks.
And I would also say, once you do start going and you start attending and your network gets bigger, start looking for people that need to know each other and be that convener of people and connector, and introducing people to other people that they need to meet or know, because that you might know that they're doing similar programming and you can connect them. And that's where the introvert part comes in. And we can all extrovert or we wouldn't be in this business. We can do with the best of them. It's just not our natural habitat. We would rather be in our room reading a book and, going to bed early, but we power through because we know the results are going to be worth it. And so just always paying attention to who's there and knowing who needs to meet who. And I would even say, and I've done this plenty of times, before the conference, think about what issues you're having. What solutions do you need? And make a list of people that you would like to meet, or people that you have heard of that you know that they're doing something really good that you would like to do, and make it a point to get to know them and even spend 5 minutes. I'm heading to Institute next week in Athens for Southeast Institute. Some of you on the call I see will be there with me next week, and I look forward to that. But I've already started getting text messages and phone calls from people saying, hey, Anissa, can I have 5 minutes to talk about this? Or I know so-and-so is going to be there. Can you connect us? Because I haven't had the opportunity to meet them yet. And I know you know us both. So just always being on the lookout and planning ahead for who you need to just grab 5 minutes with. And you might not get it all done, but connect with that person and say, when we get back home, can we schedule some time to talk about this and see how we can help each other?
Yeah, planning ahead is a great idea. And I like the idea of reaching out to somebody for that introduction. If you have somebody you want to meet, and the person who runs your state association is often a great person to reach out to say, hey, Tiffany, will you introduce me to Anissa at our upcoming conference? She's somebody I really would like to meet. So I did reach out to Tiffany Odd, who runs the North Carolina's chamber, a number of other state association chamber executive associations. One of the tips that she had, which is very base level, but it's important. Make sure you're on the mailing list, and not just the executive, but all your staff who can benefit from the information that comes out through their webinars or what have you. And let's kind of go in that direction on this. So what are some of the ways outside of that annual conference that a chamber executive should be utilizing their state association?
Well, first of all, if I can go back just a second to
Yeah.
something you said that I think is pretty critical. And Brian and I both had the opportunity. Brian, you worked under Carol, right? Or did you were hired under Bob?
I was hired under Bob.
So I had the great fortune of working for one of the industry's best CEOs, Carol Gray, who has been retired now almost 20 years. But I had the great fortune of working with him and him knowing that he could not attend all the things. And there did used to be other associations. Now they've merged into one. But he sent me knowing that I had a goal for this to be my career and knowing that he could not be everywhere. But it took me going to him and saying, I know you're not going to this conference, but I would like to go and represent us because I think I can bring some information back. So for the executives on the call, I would say, if you can't make it somewhere and the money is in the budget, why not consider sending someone else to get that information and expand their horizon and put into them some professional development? Because I don't think I would still be in this business today, this many years later, had I not gotten engaged with all of the different associations. It certainly has been my lifeline and my support system for all the years to keep me going. And for those of you on the call, you know that if you've ever gone to your state conference or any professional development, it just gives us that oomph, that energy to keep going when we are just running ragged, have just come through our busiest season, and we get there and realize we're not alone and we come back full of energy. And so I would encourage those execs on the call to consider sending someone if you can't go. And to the staff level on the call, I would say, don't be afraid to ask, can you go and represent your organization so that you can continue to learn and help your peers back at the office?
A great observation. So not only the conferences, but the other information the association's putting out, not just professional development for the executive, but the other folks on the staff. What are some of those other opportunities with the state association outside of the conference?
Well, I think we sometimes get pigeonholed into thinking we're just going to go and attend and be an attendee, which is great. But some of you on the call and many that attend all of these conferences have great expertise, and being able to share it and not being afraid to wave your hand and say, you know what, I'd like to present on this topic. I think I've got some good information to share. So giving back in that way, I have never taught one class or one webinar seminar that I didn't learn something. And just, saying, I want to participate in that way. Get on a committee, volunteer for a task force, put a bug in somebody's ear that you have a desire to be on the board at some point so that you can expand in that way. Because I just find the more I give back, the more I get in as well. And it doesn't matter if you've been in the business 1 year, 10 years, or 100 years, which some of us have been, it feels like. You've got something to share and you've got expertise on something that others can learn from. So I would say always be looking for those opportunities to give back to your state association. I would also say that while many of the state associations have a lot of commonality, they're all very different. At YGM, we have the good fortune of going to a lot of state associations. I was just in Indiana last week. We have some that we participate more than others because we have a big client base there. But as much as they have in common, there's a lot of differentiators between the conferences too, on how they're run, how they have people present, the different breakouts. So just, paying attention to what others are doing as well and saying, hey, what if we bring this to our state association? Would this work here? Can we get those ideas there? But so many opportunities to give back on different levels. You can write a blog, you can offer to do a webinar. If you're not attending the actual event, certainly speaking at the event as well.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think it's in the medical profession that they talk about training for doctors, and the way you train is you watch it, you do it, you teach it. And that teaching part at the end really makes you understand the concepts even better. And I think what I'm hearing from you, and this is that applies to chamber executives too, right? You go to the conference, you absorb it, then you start doing some of these things and really internalizing that way, and then you teach others how to do it. And that's one of those things that is the great and classic win-win that we look for in the chamber industry, is that you're developing yourself while you're pouring in to the next group of leaders and helping develop them as well. So I think that's a good idea. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, some of you on the call know this about me, but I am nothing if I'm not transparent. I kind of live my life on my sleeves, but I've told somebody, actually, it was Tiffany and Paige with the Alabama Chambers. I think I've told both of them that twice now when I have delivered my burnout, how to avoid burnout in the chamber profession. 2 times that I have presented that, I would say I was at the height of my burnout, where I could not give one more minute. But I knew by delivering that and being transparent with my own dealings that I would learn from it and come away reminded of the things that I need to do in my own life. So you're right, Brian, whether it's non-dues revenue, whether it's board development, whether it's burnout, whatever it is, when you deliver it, hearing yourself remind people of the best practices and things we need to do better and things we need to stop doing resonates with you when you have the ability and the opportunity to present it.
All right, so I'm going to go a little bit off script. Everybody, this is your warning. I did not prep Anissa on this question, but she brought it up, and it was a topic I wanted to explore. You mentioned like taking the best things from one state association and bringing them to your own. You go to a lot of these conferences, you're involved with a lot of these state associations. What are some of the coolest things you've seen a state association do that others should be stealing?
This is, we did not talk about it, but it's fresh on my mind coming from Indiana. This was my 3rd time with the Indiana execs, and they're, I don't know, maybe 180 strong at their conference. They have a really good time at their conference, which most state associations do. Chamber people, introvert, extrovert, all of us, we tend to have a pretty good time. But what Indiana does that I think is a little bit different, they actually do plan a good bit of time just social without an agenda. And the reason why they do that is because they know that burnout is real in our industry. They know that our execs in Indiana and everywhere, really, we don't get a lot of time together, and it's priceless when we do. And some of the best time that we spend together is when we don't have an agenda, that it's just sharing a meal or sharing a cocktail or just walking down Main Street together that you've never been before, and blocking off that time to just be together and build those relationships. And all state associations do that. They all build in some social time, but Indiana really puts a focus on it. They certainly have a quality program as well. They had as strong as of a professional development program as I've seen last week, but they make sure that you can knock out a little early one afternoon at 4 o'clock and go to Main Street together, and they plan some social things that make sure that they put the focus on the relationship building as well, which is just so critical. And gosh, I could probably talk till 5 o'clock today about the great ideas that each of the state associations do, because there's speed networking with sponsors and vendors. As chamber staff, we need to know, though, and now I'm on the other side as the vendor, but knowing, what resources are out there for you and who can help you do something better that you might be able to outsource is huge. So the speed networking is starting to become very popular at the state associations with the sponsors and vendors. But then also through that, you get to meet other people at the table that you might not otherwise, be in a class with.
Yeah, I'll say, so this was kind of a little bit of an oddity for me as I started going to these conferences as a vendor, because I'm always, when I've been on the other side, I kind of put the blinders on when I walk through the exhibit space because I'm like, oh, all these people here just trying to sell to me. And now I'm on the other side and I'm like, oh, I'm not really trying to do that at
I'm not
all.
trying
Like
to
if
say, oh
I've
yeah,
got a need that I can help folks with, I'm happy to talk to them about it. But
absolutely.
I'm certainly, and and it took me a while to realize this as I started to learn selling more, is like you go to this conference, you're not going to close anybody at your table when they come up to talk to you for the first time. So you're wasting both of your all's time if you even try. And I think most of the other vendors came to that realization long before I did. So all that to
Just
say,
building relationships. And
yeah,
sometimes Jason and I, many of you know Jason Eby, who's our CEO at YGM. It's building relationships, which makes all of us stronger. And we've said that word now 10 plus times since we've been on this call. But we might get a call from somebody about a total resource campaign that we met 5, 6, 8 years ago.
yeah.
And we've just developed that friendship and that relationship and that trust that when it's time for them, they'll come forward. So it's really critical, and the chamber folks are really good at it because you depend in your own community so much on your sponsors and your vendors that they're really good at coming by and meeting us and thanking us for being there, but also learning from each other. Because Brian, to your point, I probably spend more time telling people about you or telling people about other vendors or partners because I know they need it more than we do our own business, because that's just how we do it. But yeah, just being open-minded to who you're going to meet at the all of the events is critical.
Yeah, and likewise, and particularly the business that you're in Anissa with helping folks with non-dues revenue. Like I obviously want chambers to have more resources available to them so that they can get more involved in advocacy and maybe work with us or do whatever it is that they want to do. So, and I also think coming back to what we were talking about before with networking, what I've realized is a lot of times it's those vendors who know everybody in the room. And so that's a great place to go to if you're trying to meet somebody, or even if you don't know who it is you want to meet, but you have a specific problem, asking Anissa, hey, do you know anybody else who has dealt with this, is oftentimes going to be the quickest place to that answer. So, and this, we always try to keep these quick, and this time has gone by really quick for us as well today. But I do want to just kind of open it up to you a little bit. You mentioned at the top 30 years experience in this industry. What are some things you've learned that you wish you had learned 20, 25 years ago?
Oh my goodness. So many things that could be a webinar on its own, right? Because I've learned from so many other people. I mentioned Carol Gray just being a great mentor to me. And something that just popped in my head. Well, two things just popped in my head. One being um, when you go to a state conference or any conference, whether it's Institute, the Association of Chamber of Commerce Execs, their convention, anything you go to that has breakout sessions or electives, Carol used to always tell me, don't take electives on the things you're doing today.
Hmm.
Like, I lived and breathed membership for 6, 7 years. Don't take electives on membership. Take electives on economic development, public policy, things that you want to expand your resources on and your development, because that allowed me then, when I was ready to move into economic development or governmental affairs, I had some experience because I had been attending those classes. And likewise, when I had the opportunity to be a CEO at my first chamber, I was much more well-rounded because I had taken electives in all of the different things versus just my lane and not staying in it. You've got core classes and things that you can learn, on what you're doing today, but just expanding your horizon to learn other things. And the second thing that pops into mind, which comes into burnout, is take your time off. You know, I see people, I hear people, we all do in the Facebook groups and at conferences. We hear our colleagues saying, I have 6 weeks of vacation built up because I just never take it. The chamber can't run without me. And I don't want to have to catch up when I get back. We're not that important. we're doing really, really important work, but it will still be there when you get back. And trust me, I did not always sing that song for sure. The reason why I can talk about it and believe in it is because I've come out on the other side where I do, set boundaries. I had somebody reach out to me Sunday, a client that emailed me, texted me, and called me on Father's Day on Sunday. And I was with my dad, and he's 90. And I was not going to stop and go outside and, take a call. And I told her on Monday, I said, I'm really sorry I didn't get back to you. I saw your messages, but I just really tried to set the boundaries. And 10 years ago, I would not have been able to say that out loud because, we're people pleasers and I would have normally picked up the phone and dealt with it. But I knew it wasn't anything that could not wait until Monday. So setting boundaries with your time and your family and yourself. But take the vacation time. That's what it's for. We need that to recoup. I saw a job description last week for a chamber, and in their policy and procedures manual, they require their staff to take at least once a year. They have to take 2 weeks back to back.
Mm,
It's required.
yeah.
Because you think about it, when you go on vacation, it takes 2 or 3 days to start breathing and to drop your shoulders a little bit and to start relaxing, and then it's over. I know Vail Valley Partnership in Colorado, they actually give a stipend to their staff that does take 2 weeks off back to back without, if they do not check in, if they don't go on email, make phone calls, attend a meeting, they get a bonus for it
Oh,
because they
wow.
realize it is that important to their well-being and mental health to take that time. But start where you are. If it's even a half a day off and just disconnecting, I wish I had done that a lot earlier in my career because it's just critical. And the more we can help each other do that, the better off our industry is, because we lose some good people sometimes due to burnout. And I just always hate to hear that. So making sure you're taking care of yourself as much as you are your job, because chamber folks are dedicated, if nothing else, and they want to do it, and do it right. And there's too much to do on most any day. So just making sure you take that time off.
I think that's great advice, Anissa. I actually just took a 2 week vacation and got all the personal benefits that you mentioned out of it. But I'll also tell you, as an organizational leader, it's a great way to stress test your organization and find out if there are things that are broken. Because when you're there every day fixing things, you don't always see that they're broken. If you go away for 2 weeks, you come back, you're going to have a better view for whether or not they're broken. I'll just give a shout out to my team, to Sarah and Brittany. I don't think anything was broken when I came back. Almost, I've said to some people, it can be a little bit of an ego blow to be able to go away for 2 weeks and realize that everything in the world went on and in the business went on without you. But I also think it can be an ego boost to know that you've built something that can function without you. And I think that should be all of our ultimate goals, because that then gives you the flexibility to do a lot of the other more strategic things that will really move your organization forward. So with that, I think that's a great place for us to end. Thank you, Anissa, again. We will send out a follow-up email to everybody that has this recording, and we'll make sure to have Anissa's contact information in there so you can reach out to her if any of her services would ever be of use to you. A couple of things I do want to mention. One, if you found this email, particularly through social media, this webinar through social media, we'd love to have you sign up for our monthly email that will give you information about these events, as well as some other tips and tricks that we think are really helpful to you as you build an advocacy program. If you enjoyed this webinar, we hope you'll join us for the next one. We'll be back in July, where we'll be talking about 5 mistakes chambers make when building a legislative agenda. And then the final thing I'll mention, for those of you interested in learning more about advocacy and maybe how we can work with you, advocacyframework.com is the site where we talk about our online experience. And lumenstrat.com is the other website that we have for our consulting business. I think Brittany's been diligently throwing all of those links into your chat, so feel free to go and click on those. You can scan that QR code that's just over my shoulder if you want my contact information. And with that, thank you again for joining us. I hope everybody has a great Independence Day and get some time off this summer to recharge and come back ready to make your chamber the best it can be in your community. Thank you again for joining us. This has been your monthly webinar from Lumen Strategies.